Hello, everybody, and welcome to Full Course Yellow, the in-pit lane pre-show every week at 8:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Time, which is very early in the night. But anyway, we're here anyway. So thanks for joining us once again. Remember that at 9:30 on Channel 31 Melbourne, and of course on the in-pit lane YouTube channel, you can watch our half-hour special from the Baskerville Historics. Jason and I went down there earlier in the year and caught up with a few people down there. Very, very wet, very, very cold. We killed a camera, unfortunately, so not quite as much on-track action as we would have liked, but we got some fantastic interviews, and I think you'll be fascinated to see those. We've also got a lot of material, sort of cut the show together over the weekend, and just thought we've got so many more interviews and so many more cars that we can have a look at, and we're just not going to have time within the space of one show. So over the next few weeks, we'll be cutting together a few bonus interviews and show you some of the other cars, some of the interesting cars that were there at Baskerville. But joining me on the panel this week, we've got a small but quality group again tonight. We've got, once again, Craig Doc Latigo is with us, and Peter Johnson is with us as well. Gentlemen, good evening.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Pete. I don't know whether people can hear me. We've been having a few troubles with the stream before you popped on. But I think Doc has frozen again too. There he is. He's back, but he's still on mute. He's on mute, and Richard is joining us as well in a moment. So Richard has joined us as well. So go, Richard. And Richard's on mute as well.
Evening, gentlemen.
Richard is off mute, but we still can't hear Richard. So he's either talking very, very quietly, or there is a problem.
That's all right.
But he's miming beautifully. He's miming wonderfully. Exactly. He is now doing for those of you listening on the podcast, he is now doing his famous impersonation of commentator walking against the wind. And soon he will do mechanic trapped in a glass box. It's a classic.
Bit like everyone at Flemington the last couple of days. There you go. Boom, boom.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of it. I wasn't really interested, but judging by what the weather's like here.
Crowd today was 47,000, I think it was today, which is the lowest in a few years. But I think 14.
Yeah, that's way low when you consider. Yeah, but the weather doesn't. I don't know whether the cup has its sort of appeal. There's been sort of things everywhere. I know a lot of people, particularly because we work with a lot of young people on the show, and they have zero interest in the cup. It's just not a thing that interests them at all. I think it's a bit of a generational thing, and I think a lot of people are quite frankly over it now. I mean, I used to make a big fuss about the cup every year. I used to go to parties and put on a few bets, and it was the one day a year I took a bit of an interest in horse racing, but. For the last couple of years, couldn't be bothered.
Everyone used to be in a sweep, but there you go.
Yeah. That's it. And by the way, Jason Evans is on the program, and he's here to ditto anything that we say about Baskerville. Jason, as I said, Jason came down with me, and we had a ball. Despite the weather, we had a terrific time. They put us up at the Rest Point Casino in lovely rooms with nice views, and we had to pay for our meals, but they were good meals, and they supplied us with a car to drive around in, and it was it was fantastic. So thank you to everybody from the Baskerville Historics for making that possible. But have a look tonight. We've got some, as I said, some action from the track, and also some of the interviews. We did lots and lots of interviews. Probably in hindsight, a couple too many interviews, but nonetheless, better to have too much than too little. And unfortunately, our second camera really got hit by the rain by about sort of halfway through Saturday. We didn't get a lot of useful material out of the second camera. The rain just got into the autofocus and messed up everything. But thanks to everybody for their.
Jason's just doing himself a new nickname. I don't know, because it's obviously if you're listening to us in the podcast, if you could just picture Jason's little photograph in the corner there, it's a caricature, but it's. He has gold sort of locks. I'm going to call it Judge Jason because it looks more like a judge's wig if he was going to the Supreme Court today. So there you go. Judge Jason, I think there. It almost looks like he's smoking a cigar as well too. But
Well, no, he doesn't do that. Yes, rained on Friday, sunny on Saturday, mix of both on Sunday. So, but it was very, very wet. But in the morning, it was fantastic. We'd get up in the morning and sort of, open the window and go, "Oh, look at that beautiful blue skies looking out across the hills and the Derwent there, and it looked so, and we were, oh, terrific, and we jumped in the car and we drove up to Baskerville and we unpacked everything and we went into the media centre and planned our day, and the next thing, drip down the rain came. So, but anyway, it was a fantastic thing. Have a look tonight. There's lots of cars that you haven't seen before. If you like old Holdens, trust me, tonight you're going to want to see it. I've never seen so many old Holdens on a racetrack in my life, and they were immaculately prepared. It was fantastic. Hey, anyway, let's go through and catch up with a few other people as well. SB, once again, g'day, SB. How are you once again? Box is with us again. Somebody who was at Baskerville as well, and will probably attest to the fact that the conditions were terrible because he had to drive a big V8 powered Elfin sports car around in it, is Mark Goldsmith. G'day, Mark. How are you? Come from Adelaide. Yeah, fabulous. But yeah, he had a big weekend as well. So there, and also
so it was like Goldsmith down there, was it?
It was, but a fabulous little track, and really, really enjoyed it. And as I say, watch for the end of the show. You'll hear what I think of it. But I'll just let you know, if you haven't had the opportunity of going down there and racing in anything, just once in your life, you've just got to put it on your bucket list and just go down once and run it, because it is a fantastic little circuit. It is
and go to Longford as well too, like last week we were speaking of, Brett.
Yeah, we've had sort of 2 weeks of sort of Thursday night Tassie, sort of with Neil Kearney last week. Talking about Longford, and unfortunately we just had no time. Otherwise I probably would have popped up to Longford and had a look around and gone in and had a drink or three at the pub, but unfortunately we just didn't have time. I mean, we literally just, we're pretty much straight out of the hotel in the morning, up to the track and then back at night, and had something. I think Saturday night it stopped raining and we sort of went for a bit of a walk up to the town, sort of, to have a look around, and then walked back again and took a few photos, and that was the only time we got out anywhere. So, but it was great fun. Okay, so what are we going to talk? Let's get the news on the go. And what do we talk about first? Do we talk about supercars on the Gold Coast? Do we talk about Formula One at Mexico, or do we talk about Ross Chastain's Wall of Death manoeuvre in NASCAR?
Or Valencia as well too on the MotoGP.
Well, that's coming up this weekend. Yeah, so we've got that coming up as well there. But I think we should
maybe just cover it all.
I think we should start with Ross Chastain's move of the. Could this be the move of the century? Has everybody seen this? Richard and Pete, have you seen this?
Yes. Yep.
Richard hasn't seen this. Okay, watch carefully. This is not a video game.
Put Richard's face in a corner.
Yeah, but we're not quite set up for. Not quite set up for that.
We need facial reactions from Richard afterwards. So
yeah, just have a look.
Put yourself back on mute again, Richard.
I'll just set this up. This is the last lap of the race. He had to finish fifth or better to get into the final four for the championship, to be in contention coming up for the next round. So, and on the last lap, this is what he did.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack to race his way into the championship four.
He went from 10th to 5th place.
He just ran the car. He said, "But I'm not using brakes. I'm just going to run the car into the wall and slide around." And he went from 10th to 5th, and
let out,
and wiped 2 seconds off the track lap record. Okay, so what do we think?
You're on mute still, Richard. You're on mute.
Richard's still on mute, but we can see by his face what he thinks of it.
Might have to reboot it. Yeah.
Yeah. Pete, what do you think? Good move or bad move?
No, I think it was a good move. They'll probably ban it next year, but I think it was a good move.
The interesting thing is they've already said that it's not going to be banned.
They're not going to sanction it.
Yeah, it's not. Well, it's not going to be banned for this for the final. They've said that it will stay. So the problem with that is, of course, that now that he's done it, how many other people are going? So, although, as a few drivers have said, it was a very specific move to that particular track. The whole of Martinsville is covered in the safer barrier. They just felt that on Martinsville it was obviously possible to do it. He did come very close to wiping out a number of cars. If a couple of people just had got in his way a bit more, it would have been a huge accident. But he basically said that he and his brother used to play a video game back when they were kids, a NASCAR video game, and his brother used to do that to sort of pass
I think
him.
It was back in 03, I think. So
yeah, back in something like that. Some sort of really early. Some really early
PlayStation or an Xbox game, PlayStation. I think.
Whatever the game was, but he did that. Yeah, one for the history books. We'll be talking about it for ages, but it was potentially very risky, not just for him, but particularly for other drivers. And I wouldn't like to see it. I'd like to see, now that it's been done once, I think that they should say, okay, you can't do that anymore. But boy, it was a good move, and it's got. I looked at it the first time and I went, what? kept looking at it back because they didn't sort of get it live. The coverage was concentrating on the leaders, and then they showed people people at the pit lane instead who weren't taking any notice at all of the leaders. They were all, and you've got to listen to. It's on YouTube. You've got to listen to the in-car radio from the other drivers, which is hilarious. It's a mixture of both utter disgust and outrage and incredible admiration of just people going, "Oh my God, did I just see that man? Wow!"
Yeah, I think it's going to be looked upon as in admiration as a whole, because I think conceptually that's what everyone, the general public's guys. Hey, it actually works, and good on him for trying, and all the kudos to him. So you can't really knock it, because, as you said, the track was designed is almost perfect for any other thing. Maybe if they could say, like, that's the thing though. If you're 2 or 3 guys left in the championship at the end of the last round, and someone from 4th or 5th decide, I'm going to wall it for this bloody last round because I haven't done it all year either. Let's try it out in this track because no one's done it. You could take out 2 or 3 contenders for the title, and there's going to be a eruption like a volcano with lava everywhere.
That's the problem. Some of the drivers have said that, and it's interesting. Some of the drivers have said that Richmond would be the other track you could possibly do that on. But they said Martinsville was basically set up. It's totally lined in the safer barrier, and the safer barrier was just designed. It's basically been designed to protect the cars, but also for them not to hook in to the wall. It's nice and slippery. So, yeah, he's just basically put it on the wall. I just went, I'm just going to flatten it and go. And, yeah, great move. Richard, can we hear you now?
Yeah, I think you can hear me. How did he not pluck an upright out of the car? That, I mean, you explained it, but you try and do that.
About one grate. He was worried about one grade, I think, on the fence or the ground or something. Only one single grade. He said, "They could have hooked me."
Yeah, and I mean,
it's pretty lucky, I'd say.
The side of his car, yeah, he was lucky. The people in front of him were lucky as well. There were a few people who just because you hear the spotters talking and they're sort of saying, Go down, bottom, get out of the road, because he was totally out of control. They seemed to be out of control, and it could have been a really huge crash. But boy, it was a very smart move, and congratulations. And it's got us talking about NASCAR as the first story of the night. So thumbs up to you, Ross Chastain. Good on you, and fabulous move.
Can I talk about,
what's his name?
I wanted to talk about a crash
as well too, didn't I?
Was that Richard?
I wanted to talk about something I saw at a crash on the Gold Coast. There was a monumental, as we all know, but that wasn't the thing which took my attention. Not very long.
Right.
The crowd standing less than 2 meters from the wall on the inside of the chicane. 3 cars pile up in front of them, and not one of them blinked. They didn't dive for the ground. They didn't divert their attention to the cars crashing less than 2 meters away at 150 kilometers an hour. And I'm thinking, you think this is a video game?
I think there is. I really think. I think it's a problem. I've heard some sort of young drivers say. In fact, there were a couple on Midweek Motorsport a little while ago. A couple of young guys who basically were absolutely shocked when somebody in their series got very badly hurt, and it was like, wow, we didn't think it was dangerous anymore, because like that was back in the old days. But we got the halo and the carbon fibre and just everything, and with you crash and you just walk away. You crash at 220 kilometres an hour. You just unbuckle your seatbelts, get out of there, and walk away, and wait for Daddy to pay for the repairs for the next round. But occasionally people still get hurt, but. Yeah, it's funny how the sort of the reaction from some people is they're just sitting there, and you can, as you know, you can get very, very close at surface around
That's
the
right.
back
They
area.
were less than 2 meters. I mean, if I go slap my hands in front of your face, you'll probably blink. They didn't blink. They didn't jump. They didn't move. They just sort of stood there. They didn't even really focus on what was happening right in front of them, like it was.
Perhaps they were just bored.
Usually cars crashing at 150. That was a lot.
It's been a while since they've allowed like crowds like that, so they're probably a little bit stunned as well too. They don't think a bit of metal grating is going to stop any shards of carbon fibre going flying through and getting stuck in their face.
Interesting that they reported a record crowd on the Gold Coast, and if you have a look online where it's been reported on Speed Cafe and a few other places, a lot of people who were there were saying, no, we're not swallowing that record crowd. It was nowhere near as big as the crowds that we used to know from a few. This is like a record crowd since it became a supercar round, a dedicated supercar round. But it's interesting that Roland Dane in his Roland's becoming good value as a commentator, because he's putting up sometimes ridiculous things, but always interesting points in his commentary. And I think he's definitely right. And Scott McLaughlin has said the same thing. The Gold Coast needs an international presence back if they're not going to have, if they're not going to be able to have IndyCar or something. And I don't know what else they could possibly have apart from IndyCar that could run there. But IndyCar aren't interested. They need to at least get international drivers there. Make it to put it back to what it was as an endurance race, a 500k endurance race, and basically pair everybody with sort of a few big name international drivers, because that might get a bit of interest from overseas. Because as it is now, it's just another round of the Australian Supercar Championship, and yeah, it's okay. It might be a bit of curiosity, but God, I mean, you remember, Richard. I mean, we've been up there when in the days of the IndyCar, and the media centre was packed with journalists from all over the world, not just America, but from Europe, from Japan, Korea, people from everywhere. It was just fans from all over the Asia Pacific for their one chance to have a look at IndyCar racing. So you had a lot of people from New Zealand and Malaysia, Singapore, all coming down to see those cars on the streets of the Gold Coast, and those people aren't coming down. At least I don't. Apart from perhaps the New Zealanders, they're not coming down to see. They're not coming down to see supercars.
I wasn't obviously up there in the media capacity, Brett, like you and Richard, but I was up there as a tourist. Many a time I flew up there specifically for that weekend. But tourism-wise, they also come from around the world too. So it wasn't just media. The fans of not only IndyCar, but a motorsport fan would come from around the world and watch it, because I've still got memorabilia. I've still got shirts and hats and stuff like that I buy each year. It's still up in the cupboard in plastic. I haven't worn yet. And I remember going around the streets and obviously going out for dinner at night and going out with friends, or up on top of the rooftops of the hotels there. And it wasn't just Aussies. It was a mix of people from around the world. They would travel, and they didn't have to be specifically IndyCar fans. They were just motorsport fans. And
there was some good parties as well.
Well,
what was that nurse's name again, Brett? Jackie. Nurse Jackie. That's right.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, Richard. Hello, Nurse Jackie. In case you're watching,
What a balcony party.
if Shane is watching tonight, I know Shane watches occasionally. Shane would remember Nurse Jackie very well, I think.
A lot of balcony parties, 24/7 there as well too.
Oh, very much 24/7. Oh, we had some great times up at the IndyCar. It was fabulous. But anyway, that's
Anyway, so if you got
the
away
chicane
with
barriers were dangerous.
I was about to say, if you got away with a sprained wrist, you had a good weekend, I think, by the looks of things. I'm talking.
You weren't going to sprain your wrist.
Talking about the crash.
The crash. Okay.
Yeah.
The crash.
On a serious note, Paul van den Akker said, saying that having been involved as a marshal in too many major crashes, including fatal ones, never assume anything when something goes wrong close to you at trackside. That's it. You've got to keep your wits about you. And I've had to say this to people, like crew on the show, like your students and all that. They go by, but they have. A lot of them have zero fear about. Some of them are like, I don't want to stand that close, but they don't understand vehicle dynamics. They don't understand that where they're saying that they really have to focus. That's why I always liked in the old to have two people at the camera. You can't because of costs and all that sort of thing. But I really like to have two people on a camera. If you're close to the track, I like to have two people on a camera position because when you're filming, you're looking like that. You can't see it, and you're doing that sort of thing, and suddenly a car's, there's a wheel coming at you, and we've had a few wheels and bits and pieces come at us, and we've been very lucky to avoid them over the years, and some of us haven't. I mean, Stuart, who's, often here on the program, I think Stuart got collected by a sprint car at one meeting. We had a very narrow escape at the Sandown Historics, actually, which is on this weekend, of course. We had a real lucky escape a few years ago. We'd only just got out of the area that we were off the tower we were standing on, and the thing got cleaned up by a Commodore, a Group C Commodore. So, motor racing is dangerous. Let's keep it that way.
Yes.
Yep. So anyway, that's it. Yes, Sandown Historic this weekend. Pretty good fields now. Tomorrow, Friday, if you're watching on Thursday night, if you're watching us live, or any time before Friday and you're in Melbourne, free admission on Friday for practice. You can go down there, and then Saturday and Sunday, of course, pay to get in. Prices have gone up a little bit, just a little bit. $80 for the weekend.
Save $10 on a single day admission.
Yeah, you go up. I think it's $40 on Saturday and $50 on Sunday, or if you buy for the 2 days, it's $80. So you'll save $10 over if you're buying them separate.
Preview tomorrow for free.
Yeah, so you can go in and have a bit of a wander around the paddock. I'm not sure what the situation is going to be with Red Hill either, because like at Sandown Historic, one of the highlights is all the car clubs and all that all park up on Red Hill, which is a great spot to watch. Motor racing from. But unfortunately, I think with all of the weather we've had, all the rain, I think it's going to be highly unlikely that Red Hill's going to be open. Haven't heard anything official, but
no, I didn't tune into my meeting last night. I didn't venture into that, unfortunately, with one of my Victorian clubs I'm associated with. But yeah, I assume that because Shannon's used to sponsor it highly. They used to run a shuttle bus as well too, like they do most for the major meetings at Sandown between Red Hill and thing. And the other thing was Shannon's would do parade laps of certain particular highlights from their clubs would do at the end of the day.
I think that is still scheduled as well. As Paul's saying as well, of course, become a marshal and get in for free. And speaking of that, I got a release today from the Geelong revival coming up later this month. Desperately on the lookout for volunteers for all sorts of things down there. Of course, it's on the same day as Isle of Magic, unfortunately. It's going to be a huge event down there, as is Isle of Magic. So they are looking for not just marshals, but also other volunteers in the Geelong area. So if you're down at if you're down in the Geelong area and you'd like to get involved in a fabulous event, just contact, go onto the website there and contact the guys at the Geelong Revival and let them know you're interested, because they'd be very keen to hear from you, because they are running short of people in general.
And don't forget to vote.
Yes. Yes.
What are we voting on?
I won't be joining us because I'll be doing the state election. Is on that weekend too.
Well, yes. I might be as well, because RMITV is actually doing a state election coverage on the Saturday night. So I don't know whether I'll be involved in it or not. So I haven't put my hand up.
RMIT is Anthony Green. Wow.
Oh yes, he comes out for the special causes.
No, I mean, if we do it, I'm going to be the other side of the camera. I'm not going to be in front of the camera for this.
Brett Ramsey with his touchscreen.
We're looking at the latest exit polls, says Brett.
Everybody's wiped. I am not calling this. No, I refuse to call it.
Yeah.
We're turning off the machine. It's going haywire.
Mad cow, Mark, you and me both. Mark, can't get used to these different times. So Mark has officially joined us now. But yes, it is. These earlier times are throwing me out as well. Mark, I was just casually sitting there having dinner and sort of looked over and saw. Hang on, 10 past 8. Oh, my God.
You and your birds.
Oh, yes, the lake. As I said online today, I made the mistake of leaving. I went to feed them. I opened the door, and somebody
I've been there
rang.
with you. And I've been with your friendly birds, yes.
And I came in to answer the phone, and I answered the phone, and then when I walked out, instead of being outside, there's one on the kitchen table, there's one on the dining table, and there's one walking around helping himself to whatever was on the floor. So yes.
will be you want to join the Collingwood Army? You want to be a Collingwood supporter?
Don't worry, Brett. They used to do that at my place.
Yeah, no, they're good. They're
buy
good
themselves
fun.
a dinner.
Okay, let's talk about the Mexican Grand Prix, which happened last weekend. Another win for Max.
Snooze fest from Peter.
What happened?
Wake up, Peter. Off you go.
What happened to Daniel?
Well, Daniel did very well. Let's talk about Daniel.
Daniel did very well. Daniel did actually very well. It amazed me because I think throughout the season they've had an aversion to using soft tyres, and they did it at Mexico, and it worked brilliantly. So that was exciting, but the rest of it was a bit ho-hum.
Well, you can tell the fact that that once Daniel said he wasn't sure why he was so much more competitive, but those soft tyres, you could tell that when he had sort of when he had more confidence in the grip, particularly the front end grip, and also the way that track's designed. There's lots of sort of 90-degree corners like that, so he could dive in and do that sort of the last of the late breaker stuff. And he gave Sonoda a bit of a tap, which he got, which didn't go down too well. But apart from that, he went through on a lot of people very cleanly, and he got up to. He got up to 7th, and he could have been another couple of laps. He probably would have got up to 6th or 5th as well. So,
well, speaking about tyres, then Peter, what about Lulu's choice? Because he was on the radio asking, "Am I on the right tyre?"
And he always does that.
Yes, yes, almost every week.
Oh, is that unofficial way of blaming on the team that they're choosing it for him, and he's got nothing to do with it, and he can't put any blame on himself?
I don't know, but he always does that. He always
questions the strategy, questions the tyre. Yeah,
I mean, often when he does, I mean, in hindsight, not always, but often he's fairly right. That's the first time that McLaren's strategy has worked out in favour of Daniel. I mean, they've brought him in on some strange times on a number of occasions when he's been in that position where he's driven up through the field and he's got up to to 8th or 9th, or he's just behind Lando, and then suddenly they'll call him in first, and then he goes out, and you look sort of 10 laps later and he's down to 13th or 14th again, and saying, I can't make these tyres work. Speaking of tyres, the Formula One have announced today they're not going to restrict the tyre temperatures in the same way next year as they were going to. A lot of the drivers basically said that no, we're not happy about this. We think this is potentially dangerous, so they're going to, at the moment, they're going to leave it as it is. But the long-term plan is eventually to get rid of tyre warmers, and as has been pointed out in a lot of other places, lots of other categories get away without tyre warmers, and their drivers manage to cope. So the best drivers in the world should be able to do it, surely.
And what about putting them in a cryogenic chamber, the tyres, just before you put them on? You've got to warm them up a bit.
Or they could switch over to the Hoosiers that they're running in S5000.
Yes.
Proudly brought to you by the concrete and steel company.
Tyre company.
I'll go to Broader. I was just going to say send them over to Melbourne for a spring. That'll just freeze them up anyway. Well, I drove to work in hail yesterday, but that's just ridiculous. Getting back to that, I can't wait for the results that are going to come out from the last two Formula One Grand Prix from the testing, because most teams have had a whole practice session dedicated with unknown tyres that have been deliberately put on their cars, and the whole data has been taken from them. So it'll be great to see when all the data and all the comes about from all the testing that they've been doing. So that would be great, because the other thing as well too, I like everyone's opinion, about 4 or 5 of the reserve drivers, the testing drivers, the rookies have been given a run or in a session as well too, and like Daniel and a few of the other ones have given up their seat for 30, 40, 45 minutes and been running around. And I think Sargent's had a couple of runs. He got best time in the last Grand Prix, and then the Azerbaijan, you just said I think he got second best time. So there's been some rookies going around having some fun as well too, turning a wheel.
The interesting thing at the moment, in terms of what Daniel Ricciardo does next year, we now know that Nico Hülkenberg is going to Haas as their reserve driver. We've also got Stoffel Van Dorn has moved to Aston Martin as well. So what that basically means, and of course Nick De Vries is driving with Williams as a lead driver. What that means at the moment is there's a couple of reserve driver spots available, and crucially, one is with McLaren, and I don't think he's getting that. But the other two are Red Bull and Mercedes. And Mercedes, I think if they're going to make some major changes next year, they would probably be very keen to have an experienced driver on board. So I think he's a really good chance at the moment to get that Mercedes reserve drive, rather than sort of them bringing through sort of another young talent, because they've lost De Vries and they've lost Stoffel Van Dorn. So, what do you think? What do you think, Pete?
I think he's probably a good chance, but I don't see Lewis Hamilton. I think that's if any change is going to happen, it's going to be him. But I don't see Lewis Hamilton retiring anytime soon. I think he definitely wants to get that 8th World Championship, and he wants to do it on merit, not through any controversy or anything. So I don't see him retiring anytime soon.
No, he basically pretty much decided that Richard's excited. We've made it as early as we can, Richard.
It's been a big week.
If this show gets any earlier, it'll become breakfast television.
I'm just
Incidentally, I'm very confused. The only little bit of the cup that I did see, I flicked on while I was flicking around looking for the cricket, and I flicked on, and I wondered what the hell was going on, because Eddie Maguire was sitting there hosting it. It's on Channel 10. Is something I don't know about? I mean, is Eddie everywhere now? Nowhere?
No, they contracted him for a few months ago just for the one-off for the Spring Carnival. I was about to say, Richard, talk of Lewis Hamilton makes a lot of people yawn anyway too, Richard. But when you see
very divisive character.
I agree with you, Peter, but I think it's not just about Lewis Hamilton. I'm just worried about there's some rule changes that are coming through for the cars for 2023. There's 2024, etc. like that. It's a real unknown entity whether Mercedes is going to be competitive, and it all comes down to whether the vehicle is at the top of its game, not just the driver, because there's equally 5 to 10 drivers out there have got the best car under them. All of them could be a contention for the world title each year. It's not just going to be Max Verstappen's each year. If Red Bull fall off a cliff, have a falling out with an engine, a power plant provider, which has happened a couple of times in the last 10 years, it certainly will throw a spanner in the works.
Well, they've part of their sanction for breaching the salary cap. I know it's not called that, but I can't remember what it's called.
We know what you mean.
Is that they've got a reduction in use of the wind tunnel, etc. So that could thwart them next year. But the next major rule change for Formula One is happening in 2026.
So the other thing as well, though, too, remember, unfortunately, and I'm deriving this from a media organisation called Netflix. You've got one of the bigger teams that have got a $400 million budget, whereas you got a team like Haas or like a $40 million, but $40 million. They got 1/10 the budget of some of what the bigger teams have got. So just because they get their wind tunnel cut off by a few hours or whatever time constraint, some of those other ones can't afford to get any time in the wind tunnel at all, or haven't got the staff to provide for it. But yeah, not saying that. You've got McLaren that's knocking on the door. You've got Alpine. Alpine's been very competitive and more competitive than ever in the second half this year. With Alonso, they're constantly and his mate.
Well, that's the thing. Alonso's been competitive, and of course they're going to lose Alonso. Now this is the problem that they've got is they're going to find out how good Gasly is and how good Esteban Ocon is, because they want to take the next step. They want to be sort of like nipping at the heels of the top three, and at the moment they're capable of doing that with Alonso. But unfortunately, it looks like Esteban Ocon has not been the success that I think that they would like him to be, and the fact that they've decided not to pick up Daniel, could come back to bite them if Gasly isn't as good as a lot of people think he is.
Yeah. And I think that that was a petty politics of upper management, not so much Otmar and all the lower management. But I think that was just the upper management being petty, saying,
Otmar was very keen. Otmar seemed to be quite keen in getting him, but they decided, it did come from head office at Renault. Basically said, no, this guy walked out on us once before. We're not going to invite him back with open arms. And also, from a marketing point of view, you can see how attractive it would be to a French company there to have two French drivers. Two young French drivers involved, but of course they've got to provide the results that they get. But it's interesting to see where the advantage that Daniel has got. I mean, in terms of taking him from Mercedes, and where I'd be thinking of it, they're sort of saying that the next car will have some major changes. There's some stuff that they did this year that obviously didn't work. They're sorting it out now. They think they know where they went wrong. There's going to be some major changes to the design for next year. They want somebody who's got some experience in these current cars, and preferably some race experience, who can get in on the test track and can get in on the simulator and actually give them some feedback and saying, no, this is how that compares with at least what I drove last year and the car that you had last year. Which like if they bring in a really young driver, someone from their development squad, they probably can't do that, and that's going to be the problem. And everybody said it, whether it was at Red Bull or Renault or McLaren for that matter, everyone says Dan gives really good feedback.
Yep.
But yeah, I think as Paul's saying, he will appear on the Sky Sport. ESPN in America have the American, because they've just signed an extension for I think another 5 years to be to provide American coverage of Formula One. It's getting more and more popular there, and they've certainly put the feelers out and said to Dan, look, are you are you available? And if you have a look at what he did on Sky on the weekend after the race, if you go on YouTube and have a look on the Formula One channel and see sort of Dan in amongst it, he's very much at home in front of a camera. He was still full of, despite all that's gone wrong, he was still full of good humour. He was still making people laugh. He still had that smile. He's television gold. So yeah, I don't think there's any problem about Daniel sort of disappearing completely. But obviously he wants to get his bum back in the seat of a competitive Formula One car again. But whether that train might have left the station, unfortunately. But anyway, before
just on that as well though too, Perez is actually, as you were mentioning Red Bull, Perez is signed to the end of 2024. And the other one, sorry, was remiss. We both probably forgot it. Van Dorn is that was only a day ago. Has been signed as the Aston Martin reserve driver as well there too. So, I think you should get a Scottish cap, Richard, and channel your Jackie Stewart, because he's always very critical of the Lewis Hamilton. You get that look up and going, grow the hair a little bit longer and a bit grayer.
A big fan of Lewis.
But anyway,
and Jackie? What about Jackie too?
I'm a great fan of Jackie too. He talks highly of me.
Talks highly of everybody.
Well, he spoke highly of me because that's the last time I spoke to Jackie Stewart. We were actually in Shane Warne's Club 23 at Crown Casino, and I was wondering how the hell I managed to get an invite somewhere, and sort of pointed out that I was the only person in there that I didn't know. And Jackie said, well, I must be the second one, because he said nobody has any idea who I am. And I said to him,
he invites the whole world.
I said to him, well, don't worry, I said, I know who you are. And he looked at me and he said, that's no consolation.
There was no fans around to adorn him.
Well, they were all. It was full of sort of soap opera stars and and people from the world of wonderful, and they had no idea who anybody from. And Jackie was just wandering around looking as lost as I felt, and so I said hello, and but we started to talk, and then suddenly he looked over and he went, "Oh," he said, "there's someone I know." And David Coulthard walked in the door, and he just made a beeline for David Coulthard. It was like, oh, thank God, someone. I sort of sat there for about another sort of half an hour, knocked back as many drinks as I could manage to get on the bar, which was several, and sort of snuck my way, quietly made my way out. But
I'm going to interrupt the podcast here, unfortunately. South Africa and Pakistan are playing tonight in Sydney, and the Pakis have scored 9 for 185, which is nothing to be.
That's a good recovery. That's a big recovery.
9 for 185, nothing to be sneezed at, and South Africa the 2 for 20 after 3 overs. So.
That was because I stopped watching about halfway through the Pakistan innings, and they weren't going all that well. So somebody's had a big hit. Someone's done very well out of that. So yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting because South Africa, of course, on the top of the group later as well. So and Pakistan have got to win tonight if they've got.
These matches all depend on whether Australia gets through as well, though. Too, they're basically.
Well, to Australia tomorrow night in Adelaide, Australia will take on Afghanistan, and hopefully it won't get rained out.
And Ireland taking on New Zealand as well too.
Ireland, so you would assume that New Zealand will. So New Zealand are almost certainly there, despite their loss to England the other night. And then it's going to come down to. It'll probably come down to the final match that England is in, which I think is on Sunday, as to whether Australia gets on. Because I mean,
Sri Lanka, England.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that.
Sri Lanka, England on Saturday, and tomorrow at 3 p.m. is the luck of the Irish and the Kiwis. There's little Kiwis.
And the Kiwis, yeah. So, but anyway, that's our World Cup report, proudly brought to you by. Okay, so just quickly before we go, because we're starting to run out of time, Doc, we've got the final round of MotoGP coming up at Valencia. And it'll be the last Remy Gardner, as we see in the bottom, as Remy sort of saying he's going in, looking at this with looking a bit feeling a bit sort of mixed emotions about all this. Interesting that his team boss basically came out and just basically came out and said, look, he just wasn't good enough. He just didn't get the results that we wanted from him. This is a cutthroat business. We gave him as long as and we just weren't convinced that he was going to take that next step. So we've got someone else in. So it'll be his last race, and it does come down to the wire. Although you would have to say that Bagnaia has almost got it in the bag, but not completely. If he doesn't finish and Quattararo finishes well, Quattararo can still defend the title.
So just briefly on that, Quattararo's imploded in the last few races. He was leading the championship about only 3 or 4 races ago. Who would have thought? But look, he's been very inconsistent, and he's had one of those years again where he's hot and cold. He's like a roller coaster. So and people are questioning. I think we talked about this last week. His mental capacity as well, though, too. He just doesn't seem to get on top of it. But to his credit, he doesn't blame the bike, and it's all there. I mean, Yamaha. There's a reason why there's probably half the field's Ducatis these days, because 10 years ago they come from obscurity and they were giving a whole lot of credits. I don't know if everyone's forgotten where Ducati came from a long time ago, and every fringe team were given some extra tires, or they were given a soft tire rather, or what they called multi the sides of them where they got the two.
Sort of the twin compound sort of
tires. Compound of the tires. I forget exactly the technical term of it right now, but so unfortunately, as you were saying before too, with Remy going and out the door, which usually in MotoGP it's not like Formula One. Once you're gone, you're gone, because you either get you got to find yourself a gig at World Superbikes, which most of them readily do drop back down to. Danilo Petrucci's finding that right now too. He reckons he's too tall and too fat. That's his words as well too. So he's going to have to find a seat somewhere else and move on, because with Suzuki going out the door, there's a bit of a squeeze on, and there's 2 riders like Rins and Mir that are going to be finding new homes as well too next year. So Bagnaia just basically has to finish the race, and well-deserved though too. He has been up there in the podiums or on the fringe again, and hasn't been anywhere near as much as some of the other riders. So good luck to him. However, Ducati have come out and said and a lot of skeptics, a lot of criticism, it would be very unprofessional if they were to put team orders out there.
Yeah, I think they'd be mad not to. I think certainly with his, you wouldn't want a repeat of what happened at the last round with his teammate for next year. Jack Miller, to his credit, has already said that he doesn't want to be a hero. He's there to support his teammate. He's there to support the team, and he's certainly not going to be doing anything to make life difficult for Paco. So I think that he's okay from that perspective. But
Paco and Thriller Miller go back all the way to the start of MotoGP. So they started back in Moto3 back together. They've been teammates for years. It's just a coincidence. They've moved along in the same direction as each other, up the ranks and up to the manufacturer, up to the factory team. So they've been good mates for years, and I've never heard, other than media trying to hype something up, there's never been a bad word for them. They are good mates as well too.
Well, I think it seems to be that everybody's pretty much a good mate with Jack. I mean, half of the field were at his wedding.
Except for Joe and Mir.
Except for Joe and Mir, yeah, but I don't think Joe and Mir is the most popular person.
No, you got
around,
that.
So
yeah. He's pulled off. He's done some silly moves on the track, and also peeved P-E-E-V-E-D a few people on the way. I think his professionalism has been questionable on the odd occasion, including Rins. Rins hasn't been happy with him a couple of times either. That's his teammate.
Yeah, well, that's going to be that's interesting. That he looked to be like the next big thing, and then his form just went out the window, and it's going to be good racing on the weekend. Good to see what happened. I mean, we had a good year of MotoGP racing in the main, and it goes down to the wire. But at least for this weekend,
And Valentino Ross will be there as well too. He's confirmed to attend.
Yeah, we haven't seen much of him around the place. I thought he might come down for Phillip Island, but he didn't come down, and he is going to be there just walking around, and he seems to be concentrating at the moment on his car racing career, and more particularly his family and his other business investments and things like that. But he seems to be having a good time at the moment. But we'll see him in action.
Right.
His bike team is going all right, so yeah, good luck to him. Then, as Paul's saying, once the season is over, Jack's going to be back at the Bend again for the Aussie Superbike finale at Tailem Bend. So it's good to see him. Good to see him once again coming back and putting in for the local effort, and good to see that Ducati have got behind him and made it possible for him to do that. Cat on board again as sponsors, so that'll be good to see, and I know that people are looking forward to that because
Josh Hook, I think, or someone, he's got a teammate as well too, running a Ducati as well. I think yes, another practice.
Yeah, I think it's a very good field for that last round at
just
at
on the Bend
Bend
as well too. They've opened up. Oh well, you can probably talk about the news. We heard some big news about the Bend as well though too, so for an extra round next year at the premium level, but they've also, I think, opened up late November and an extra track day as well too. I just saw briefly. So if you want to go to South Australia and want to run your little Hyundai around like Richard does, they've opened up another opportunity. But yeah, there was news too that the Bend got left off the supercars list.
Well, we don't know that
at this stage.
Yeah.
It's looking increasingly like the word coming out of supercars is that the New Zealand round is gone and that Winton is probably gone as well. If the New Zealand round is gone, the Bend is the first cab off the rank to replace it. If Winton is gone, they may not just replace it. But I think Winton will come back because I'm sure with an election just around the corner, because the reason that they're not going back to Winton is the government sponsorship has run out from Tourism Victoria and from the regional there. But I'm sure with an election around the corner that we're going to hear from both sides on in terms of motor racing. I'm expecting, can't say too much, but I'm expecting a very big announcement from the current government regarding
$15 million sponsorship deal like the netballers got or something.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot more than $15 million if the rumours are true. We're talking 10 times that. So we're talking a big investment.
What about the MSA announcement where Queensland Raceway, Sydney Motorsport Park and the Bend are getting an extra round as well too next year?
Well,
that's just in case they don't get a supercars round.
That is interesting because they're going to follow they've moved the Shannon's Nationals and the ARG together. There's categories that haven't been able to come to an agreement with ARG in particular about paying for television. And this is basically to provide us a spot for those categories, like possibly Formula Ford, sports sedans, a few of those other categories that otherwise would not have a national series. Now, the problem with this, and as I put on Facebook, once again, they're saying that these meetings will be one after the other. There'll be the national round, the Shannon's Nationals round, and then there will be this new series coming at the same track the week after. At some tracks, you will have 3 weeks in a row. You'll have supercars, Shannon's Nationals the next week, and then this new series the week after. Has somebody spoken to the officials, the volunteer officials about this? And as I said, that is a rhetorical question. Because if you want to comment, by all means do so, but I'm sure that they haven't. Incidentally, I have invited both Eugene Arocca and Michael Smith onto the program in the next couple of weeks to have a chat about a whole bunch of things. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. We've got 3 weeks to go. 3 weeks to go. Yeah, just quickly, yes, Robert Noka.
Quickly, Tony Stewart as well too. Congratulations on making the final and his debut over there in the drag racing in HRA.
Yeah, and did well in top alcohol.
002, whatever it was. At the final, he got beaten by a lovely girl who's smashing him over there as well at the moment too.
Yeah, well, he came in. He's come in basically because his girlfriend is Leah Pruitt, who is like a one of the top fuel drivers in the NHRA, and he runs the team with her, and he runs her car, and he basically has got the bug now. He's jumped in behind the. Yeah, jumped in to have a bit of a steer of the top fueler just as see what it was like, and gave it a bit of a half-track pass and went, "Oh my God, this is good!" And now he's got into it, and he's got a top alcohol car, and he's getting involved in that. So that's really good. That's really good there. Roy is saying.
Ooh.
Yeah, a friend. Okay, so what Roy is saying there, a friend just moved to Sydney and wanted to go to Sydney Motorsport Park. The only big events there start in June. I wish they filled the new series into these types of gaps. Yeah, that's what I say about S5000. The S5000 series, and a lot of those series should be starting now. And they should be starting up north and then moving their way down, and we should be having the Victorian rounds in sort of late January into February and March, and have a summer series because.
And don't interrupt the Bathurst 12-hour.
That's it. What was that, Pete?
2 minutes.
Oh, okay, thanks for that, Pete. Yeah. So 2 minutes until we go to air on Channel 31.
Floor manager.
Now, just thank you. Yeah. You can take the boy out of the floor, but you can't take the floor out of the boy. That's for sure. He's got that. Yes. Also, yes. The old
Can you
episode of.
Can you give us the 1 minute sign too as well too?
Please? Yeah. Just for old time's sake, Pete. Give us the wind up.
Give us the wind up and the 1 minute, please. Yeah.
You're the only one we'll listen to. So thanks for enjoying the old episode of In Pit Lane from 1998 with Mark Noski and Mark Scaife and those guys. So yes, there'll be more of that coming. Where we've got tapes lined up for Roy, and so there'll be more old In Pit Lane stuff coming up very, very soon. But right now we better get out of here. Baskerville Historics is on Channel 31 right now, so tune on to In Pit Lane. Next week, no full course yellow next week. We'll in fact be coming to you live from the launch of the RMIT racing program for 2022 from Story Hall. So keep an eye out on that next week, live from Story Hall. We've got to get out of here. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us, guys. Bye, everybody.
Have a great